Hello, Bigfoot enthusiast. Scott here from Squatch America.
And Hannah, the organic backyard farmer and mother of cluckers, wearing a really awesome cowboy hat tonight. Are you going to ask me why I'm wearing my cowboy hat tonight?
Why are you wearing your cowboy hat tonight?
Well, two reasons. One, because it's stupid hot. And this actually, I think, saved me from getting another sunburn on my neck. And two, I look a lot better than Chad Prather does in his.
Oh,
I'm so much cuter. And if he ever watches this, I'm going to stand by my word. I am cuter in my cowboy hat than Chad Prather is in his.
Oh, there we go. So
I'm wearing it. I'm also wearing it for Joe. So if Joe's out there, I'm thinking about you. And I was actually thinking about you, cowboy, when we had homemade carnitas for lunch today with just a bite of jalapeno. So that was for Joe.
That's for Joe.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into this. All right, welcome to the show tonight. We've got hi Dale, hi Donna, Pepper Two Bears.
Gordon, yay!
Hey Gordon.
Hi and bye, Danny.
Hi Danny.
And bye, Danny.
All righty. So we got a great show for you tonight. Tonight we have Dennis Carroll, and to give you a little prompt on who he is, he's a published author, a specialist in the strange and paranormal, UFO, cryptid researcher, legend hunter, paranormal scholar, consultant, author of the occult, and
authority, dear.
Oh, authority. Well, it's very blurry for me. Is that blurry?
He's an authority on the occult, superstition, and folklore, and a radio talk show host.
All right. So we got through all that.
If you paid as much for your glasses as I did for mine, maybe you could see better.
No, doesn't that look blurry?
Not too blurry. And he has 40 years. You close it. Okay. He has 40 years of life experience. There we go. And interest in all aspects and fields of the paranormal, the supernatural, high strangeness. I like that. High strangeness.
And
cryptozoology.
All right. Hi, Dennis. How are you tonight? Oh, he's muted.
That's getting a little bit older than I've been a little bit more into it than 40 some odd years, going on 50 years. But now I'm not gonna say how old I am. But anyway, it's been a while. But I've always, I was saying earlier, and we met on William Nighthawk's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I love the whole paranormal pie. I don't want just one slice, but I'm a glutton when it comes to the paranormal stuff. I like it all. But cryptozoology has always been a fascinating aspect of it to me. I've done a lot of Bigfoot hunting, dogman, different types. One of the Shunko Oregon was one of my favorites. And here in my section of the woods, we have several different. I've been on the trail. My favorite, that's not too far from where I'm at, is Lizard Man. I know you've heard of the Lizard Man. Yeah. I've actually been to Scapor Swamp looking for him. And let me tell you something strange about that. While I was there, I have a Geiger counter, and I picked up some interesting traces of radioactivity around that swamp. I never have run into that in a swamp before, but I talked to a fellow down there, and he was pretty. I'm not going to say who he was. He was anonymous, but he's pretty high up in the government down that way. And he said that a lot of chemicals had been dumped in there. He said there could be anything out there.
Oh, no.
So I said that sounds something like a science fiction movie, kind of a synopsis going on there. But I did pick up, and while I was standing there, Scott, I was right at the edge of the swamp, and I looked down and said, "Why is all this grass kind of flattened down?" And all of a sudden, it occurred to me I was standing right in the middle of a gator slide, which is not a good place to be.
No.
But so there could be not just lizard man lurking in that swamp, but a lot of other things. But swampland is a different terrain. Of course, I'm sure you've encountered that before. It's a whole lot different than woods or forest or deep forest. The woods and forests that we have in my vicinity, there's really two different types. You have what I call I call it sort of a northern type forest where it's clear and trees. You have a lot of trees, of course. You don't have a forest without trees, but you have a lot of clear space in those. Now, but there's another kind that's just really not my favorite, and it has a lot of brush. And it's been my experience that certain types of Bigfoot signs seem to be more prevalent. Well, there's a lot of brush.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've often said that Bigfoot is the world champion hide and seek of champion, world champion. And if I were going to hide someplace like that, I definitely would look at the brush real close, because that would be where I'd want to get. Because for one thing, it's very good to camouflage yourself, but it's also another thing, it makes you inaccessible. It's harder for people to get to you, So that's smart, smart idea. But over the years, and like I say, I've heard so many different theories and so many different spins on Bigfoot and all that, and we talked about that a little bit one time. To me, it's how I just think, my own personal opinion, Bigfoot is more like, to me, a missing link. Maybe I'm not going to say an actual missing link, but perhaps a link to our past. More so than some people say he can cloak himself, like Predator. You remember the movie Predator?
Yeah.
That he can cloak himself like that. I'm not sure about it. I've never actually run into that incident of that happening. But let me tell you about my experience. My main Bigfoot experience, and that may help you understand a little bit where I'm coming at. Anyway, I was in the forest, deep in the forest of the Oconee County, which is not too far from where I'm at. And it is, there are of course, there's a lot of farmland there, but there are large, dense patches of woods there. I was out there in the middle of nowhere. So if you've been in that situation, you know how dark it can get at night with no street lights and civilization around. So it's very, very dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with two other guys, and we heard some tree knocks. We actually did hear a few tree knocks. So I said to one guy, I said, "Look, let's take a little, a little lesson from the tiger hunters of India." I said, "You go to the left and go deep in the woods." And I said, "Oh, the other guys, you go right, and maybe we can flush something out towards me. I'll be in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that. They actually, one went to the left, and I lost sight of his flashlight in the dark, and we went off in the dark. The other one on the right did that, and I heard some tree knocks, and all of a sudden now, I hear these tree knocks around me. There's more than one. There's like three around me, one behind me and one on each side. So those guys I can see way down in the forest. I mean, way down. I barely can see flashlights moving around, and I see them start coming towards each other. That's the way, I don't know if you've ever I've never hunted tigers, but but I read about that, And that's the way you do it. You flush your game towards you, kind of a thing. Well, all of a sudden, and I had these night vision goggles, and I was sitting there. I don't know if you've ever messed around too much with night vision goggles.
Yeah.
They can hurt your eyes after a while. You know what I'm talking about? They can really do a job on your eyesight. So I was kind of resting my eyes for just a moment. Just took them down. And of course, that's all it takes. You drop your guard one time. That's it.
Yeah.
That's like, hey, we see a UFO. Go get the worst camera you got to take a picture of it, kind of thing. But anyway, I saw a movement, and I immediately lifted the goggles up. And when I did, there was like to my left, maybe about I would say no more than 6 yards away. To my left, there was this huge oak tree there. And I saw movement to that oak tree. Now, I didn't see the whole body was. What I saw was like an arm. And as it went behind that oak tree. And I mean, it's a very wide oak tree, big. So I think it was a live oak, and they get big, they get big around. Anyway, I saw this arm disappear behind the tree. Now, I'll describe the arm to you. I'll tell you what it made me think of. You've seen an orangutan. You know what I'm talking about. They have long hair. Have you ever noticed that? They have kind of longer hair than most apes do. And this arm had long hair down. Now, I'm not going to say real long, but I would say at least 7 or 8 inches long, hanging off of this arm, which is all I got to see. That's just how quick this incident took place. It was almost like an image you see in a flash of lightning, And I jumped up and immediately headed for that tree. And here's the interesting part. It was just gone. There was like a sapling there, about a 6-foot sapling, maybe an inch round, that was moving. There was no wind. So this thing, when it passed, it hit that sapling and it was moving. Mm-hmm. I got to that tree. I could see down through the forest, with the flashlight. There's no way anything like that could have gotten out of my sight that quickly without leaving some trace through that forest. I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but it can be rather disturbing. I look up in the tree. Did it go up the tree? Where did this thing go? And to me, that was the amazing part of this whole incident. Not only I saw a little bit of what I really wanted to see that night, but only just a tantalizing little bit of it.
Yeah.
But it got to me. I said, "Where did it go?" And I don't think it cloaked. I don't know about that. But to me, I think here's what I think. My own personal opinion, and I've done a lot of ruminating on this. If you are one with the land, and we've seen many animals that can do this. They can blend in. You can't even see. They'll be right in front of you, and you can't even see them. Look at the polar bear. The polar bear is so smart. He knows that his black nose will give him away. He'll cover his nose up when he's hunting with one paw. He'll cover his nose up or put snow on it. That's smart. These things that we're dealing with is not stupid. It's smart. Very, very smart. Very intelligent. But if you're going to get into talking about cloaking and all that, then you got to get into portals and that stuff associated with Bigfoot. And when it comes to dog man, I might could see that going on. But to me, Bigfoot has just always been, Sasquatch has always been more or less an animal as nature like to me. It's just an unknown animal. You know what I'm saying? To me, that's just the way I felt about it over the years. But that was my incident of what happened to me that got me really, interested in more Bigfoot accounts and Sasquatch and all that. When you have something like that happen to you, it kind of lights a fire under you, and you want to know more about, what you've seen and try to understand what you've seen. I think that is actually where science should come in on stuff like that. Science is the way to. I wrote a book called Beyond the Shadows, and the subtitle is a field guide to the paranormal. There are certain ways that you investigate. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, and I went to the experts to learn how to investigate. To understand things and how they go about it. I look at an investigation sort of like a crime scene. To me, that's how you go about to assimilate the information you need when you investigate something. That's the smart way to do it, to me. But also another way to look at an investigation, whether it's Sasquatch or spiritual type, investigation, or whatever the case may be. Another way to look at that is as if you are doing a scientific experiment, the criteria of a scientific experiment, you might say. By doing that, you can assimilate more knowledge and probably understand a little bit more what you're dealing with. That especially is prevalent with Dogman, Bigfoot, and other such type cryptids. But I know I'm getting long-winded here. But the thing is, Dogman doesn't fall to me in the same class or criteria as Sasquatch does. And and you go back to the accounts of the Native Americans, and they looked upon Sasquatch as another tribe of people. They had dealings with them and all. And I know that you and I, last time we talked, we got into giants. To me, that's not impossible. We'll talk some more about that. But to me, giant, a race of giants. Now, I'm not talking about 20-foot guys or 50-foot woman is the old horror thing, right? But it's not that far fetched that you couldn't have had some type of. We do know that certain genetic things produce pygmies. And all, and we've seen that. I think it was an Indonesian island that had the hobbits. You remember that? I think I found that. To me, that's fascinating. That is natural things that could contribute with the DNA of certain things and the way it turns out. Right? Yeah, you may have run into that.
And environment. Environment has a lot to do with it too. It's just like the pygmies. The Homo floresiensis is what they're called, but they're stuck in a small island, so they have a small area, so they're smaller people basically. So that's it. And it's time for our break already. Oh my gosh, Dennis. All right, so hold on a second.
There have been over the years so many accounts, especially of women being abducted by Sasquatch and all that. You could put Hannah out there as bait maybe sometime and see if that works.
Hey, I have bait. They're called Squatch.
But anyway, I don't know if I do that, but anyway, there have been a lot of accounts of that. And the Native Americans warned their women, do not be alone in the forest.
Very true. Very true.
And when you talk about something like that, it gets kind of serious because you're talking about people's lives and all that, what they say. But to me, that's another telltale sign of something, like I always say, where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's definitely something going on with that. I look, to me, the most fascinating aspect of all this, Scott, is folklore. Folklore, culture, legend, and anthropology. I'm sort of an amateur anthropologist in that aspect. I love culture, folklore, and all that. But there are certain clues that are there in folklore, and we don't need to overlook that because they can tell us a lot of things. I'm a member of the American Folklore Society, and there are libraries of study on nothing but folklore because it is so ingrained into our culture and our way of life. It would be foolish to ignore it.
Yep, that's very true. All right, Dennis, hold on a second, and we got to do a little commercial break, and we'll be right back, okay? Mute him. Go.
Friends, American farmers recently warned about coming food shortages. They're not going to be able to grow enough food this year because of an off-the-charts fertilizer shortage. That means you need to stockpile emergency food if you don't have some. Get prepared with My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest preparedness company, proudly offering Ready Hour brand products because they are the very best. Click on our affiliate link in the description below and stock up now. Their kits provide breakfasts, lunches, dinners, drinks, and snacks, totaling over 2,000 calories a day. You won't go hungry when you have this food, so click on our affiliate link below and don't let your family suffer. Act now while there's still time.
There we go. That's out of the way. All right. So, back to Dennis. What's that? I know. I got to click this. All right, Dennis. So we were talking about folklore, and I'm a Native American culture anthropologist, and I know there's a lot of folklore that I've heard from tribes all over the nation. I'm not sure. I haven't spent much time down there in the Carolinas.
We like South Carolina.
We like South Carolina. That's where Hannah graduated college from Anderson. But do you know any of the native stories from down there in that area?
Yeah, well, we have where I'm situated at. We have a very large lake called Hartwell Lake, which is partly over into the Georgia side, but it's over here in the South Carolina area as well. It's a very large inland lake, and it's been my experience. I've heard a lot of interesting sightings that have been around there. If I go to look for Bigfoot, Sasquatch, I would definitely go to a body of water because all wildlife eventually, no matter what it is, will gravitate towards water. That's just the way late nature is, you know. But I heard it. I had a guy that told me the other day that he was out fishing. He was in a boat on the lake, and he wasn't too far from the shore. I think they were biting better towards the shore than they were out towards the middle of the lake or something like that. And he said all of a sudden he sees a bush on the shore kind of moving a little bit. And says Sasquatch stands up out outside of this bush and just staring at him, you know. And it scared him so bad, you know. He said he didn't see the lower part of it, just the upper part of the body. And he said it was just stood there staring at him, and then it turned around and walked off into the bushes, you know. He said it scared him so bad. He said, I just put my tackle up. I went back to shore. That was it. And I was done for the day. And he told me, actually, and you know, when you interview people like this, you can catch, and interviewing is a very important thing on investigation. When you interview somebody that had that experience, you can actually many times still see that fear in them, that you can still hear that fear in their voice. You know that something traumatic has happened to this person, you know. And he told me he's really, although he loves to fish, he hasn't been back fishing since, really, because he's just scared of what he may see, you know. But that to me is not very far from where I live, so that made me want to go fishing.
There you
actually.
go. Yeah.
But there's been a lot of sightings around here of there's one particular Sasquatch that I really want to get on the trail of. It's called the White Thing. You ever heard of that?
No.
It's supposed to be solid white Bigfoot. It's got fur like a polar bear kind of thing, but it's Bigfoot, and they call it the White Thing. That's just the name they give it. And it supposedly has sort of haunts the farmland around in that area, especially over in the Georgia side. And what it does is it mainly will carry off maybe small goats, an occasional pet dog, or whatever. And so I've often wondered, is Bigfoot actually a carnivore? You know, and a lot of sightings you hear. I was reading one the other day. I've been on a friend of mine named Lon Strickland. I've been on his show a lot, and he had a report the other day of somebody actually just walking up on a Bigfoot that was sitting there, and it was stripping leaves off a bush and eating them. You know, but if you survive like that in any kind of terrain, Scott, you're gonna definitely eat anything. Whether it be meat or berries or whatever, roots. If you survive, you know how to survive, you know, so you're going to go to your food source, whatever it may be. But I have actually heard so many reports of these things hauling animals off and stuff, it makes me wonder if by nature, if it's not basically a carnivore, you know. Although we've never had an actual skull to really look at and study the teeth and all that, or how it works, it sounds to me like it would be that. I have never really heard too many times of Sasquatch supposedly being sighted with fangs. Although I don't think I've ever heard that much. If somebody were to tell me that, I'd have to look twice at that, because I have never heard that much. Very, very seldom heard of that. But some gorillas do have fangs. Some of the mountain gorillas in Africa and all that do have although not very large fangs, they're still fangs. They're not like a saber-tooth tiger or anything. But to me, there are certain hallmarks of Sasquatch that stand out among others, and that's one of them. Along with its supposed dietary habits, the many signs they supposedly leave. I found so many crossed branches, dead trees. I still want to see one like they found in Alaska, where the tree is uprooted and stuck back in the ground upside down. That would be very interesting. I don't know if you've ever come up on anything like that.
One time we found one here in Eastern Oregon in the Blue Mountains. We found one tree that turned upside down, jab back in.
Well, it's theorized that that's sort of a warning sign. Like, you're in my territory, don't get in here,
Yeah.
I'm a keep out sign.
Yeah.
But I've heard of that happening a lot in Alaska, definitely. Which is one place I've to be on my bucket list to go, definitely.
Yeah.
But to me, there are certain hallmarks that stand out, and as an investigator, someone that hunts these things, you have to look for these certain telltale signs and all that. But you need to know the background. You got to know the history and what other race, people have actually seen along the way and things. Theodore Roosevelt supposedly had a run-in with a Sasquatch. So there's a lot of interesting things to the history of Sasquatch. It makes it a very fascinating aspect of the paranormal world.
Yeah, Daniel Boone actually had one too. He wrote about it.
And but in the case of giants, and of course the Native Americans talk about those, and we mentioned the fact that there was probably, and we're very sure, scientific-wise, that there was a race of people here before the Native Americans were here. That race of red-haired giants, supposedly, that they ran into the caves and killed them with smoke and fire and all that. I find it very interesting that supposed report of the Kandahar giant, which I think may or less be a story. I'm not too sure about that being an actual thing, but I find it very interesting that he's described as having red hair. And according to legend, Goliath was supposedly had red hair. So what's going on with the red hair and giants? It's kind of strange. But the giants are very much in the legend of. But on the flip side of the giants, in Apache and Cherokee legend, you have the moon-eyed people, the very small, kind of diminutive type people that actually lived in caves and all that. Supposedly like the red-haired giants. I was telling our friend William Nighthawk that the other day. There are, and you know what I'm about to say, there's a big correlation between Bigfoot sightings and cave systems. And if I were going to hide, that is the one place I would definitely go, into a cave. That is the perfect hiding spot. And we do not know, although as children we were taught, and I'm sure you were, I was, taught, the whole world's been explored and we know everything about it. Now we're going to go to the stars. But whoa, wait a minute. There's a whole lot of this planet that's never been explored. There's the vast forest, virgin forest that still exists, jungles that are inaccessible. It could be anything in those jungles, like the supposed dinosaurs that have possibly been seen in the Congo and all this stuff. There's a whole lot of it, and the biggest part of this world that is vastly unexplored is underneath our feet. I mean, there could be anything down there. I mean, and to me, if I were going to hide, that's where I definitely would go. That would be my number one spot. But if Sasquatch is that big of a good at hiding and seek, that's where he would definitely, I think, go. But in the forest, well, still, I believe he can blend into the forest. We do know that the Native Americans, very much, any people that are close to the land have that ability to become one with the land to a certain extent. And I think Sasquatch definitely would fit in that category.
Yeah, I have a thought that Sasquatch is really good at sitting still, and I've heard stories where people have walked by them and then turned around and saw them standing right next to them, where they had just stood so still they just let people walk right by them, and you never see them because they just blend in, and they're good at that.
Yeah. Well, you know, when something like that happens to you, I say you kind of turn a corner there. You know, you kind of corner in your perspective on things. It changes your way of thinking on things. I've had that happen several times in my paranormal career, where I say I turn a corner, and it definitely, you know, makes the game a whole lot interesting, more interesting.
Yep.
But to me, I don't know how you feel about it. I'm not too sure. Let me tell you this. I have heard so many reports, and there's so much out there, and it's very hard to differentiate between legend, rumor, and fact. Sometimes it becomes so muddied. The water becomes so muddy, and then you don't know where you're walking, you know. So you have to be very careful. But when it comes to the giants and all that we were talking about earlier, that's not that far fetched. But I have to wonder about the fact that they say that the Smithsonian and certain areas of that are covering this stuff up. I have investigated that a lot and come to a lot of dead ends on that. I don't know. It doesn't. I don't know. If you would be so threatened by that you are afraid your tenure might be threatened by it, or your grant money might be threatened by it, or what, that's a possibility. But to me, it's kind of far fetched that men of science, that would really be real true men of science and women of science, don't leave them out, would not cover something up like that. You know, I mean, I just don't see them doing that. To me, and it might be, I may be wrong, but I'm just saying it just doesn't seem like a lot of times that would happen. It's possible, though. It's possible. But, you know, the so-called photographs of the big giant heads, the skulls they found and all that, you know, you got to kind of wonder about some of this stuff. If giants did exist, I do not believe that they were 20 and 30 foot tall. I mean, gravity alone would would be so hard on something like that, you know. But I go back to a lot of the ancient records in Babylon, and of course the Bible and all these ancient books that talk about these beings. They put them basically around 11 and 12 foot. And we talk about Sasquatch being around that height as well. Sometimes I'm just wondering how many times that crosses over, you know. And it gets muddled up between the giants and Sasquatch kind of thing, you know. But if you were going to talk about portals and all that, you're going to get into that, because that made me think about it when the word. I do not think about portals as much. I don't call it portals. I call it crossover. There's a crossover going on between realities. That's possible. That's possible. That's scientifically possible. But that would be where I think Dogman would fall in the category, or some of these other type animals, you know. I've studied a lot and investigated the chupacabra a lot. I don't know if you've been interested in the chupacabra. Any of you ever had any experiences with the chupacabra?
Well, I spent a lot of time in Arizona and New Mexico and in Texas, and that's the number 2 on my list. I'm at Bigfoot first, chupacabra second. I'm really convinced about the existence of that. So we have a question here, Dennis. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, okay.
Right. The spirit cave mummies helped prove Caucasian people were here before Indians came, and the story about a cave and a fire. Perhaps 6 foot tall people would be giants to people averaging 5 feet tall.
That's very interesting observation.
Yeah.
I think there may have been Caucasians here due to the Vikings. I know were explorers here, definitely, and some of that may have been taken from the meetings between Native Americans and Vikings. That would have been the first time maybe that they would have run into Caucasian type people. But you have to wonder if some of that stuff that predates the possible Viking type thing. I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the peoples that inhabited this land before the Native Americans. What legacy they left behind. We were talking about folklore earlier. Folklore has a way of becoming history, passed down from generation to generation. To me, that's the fascinating aspect of it all. In Ireland, which I'm mostly Irish, in Ireland, history for thousands of years was preserved in songs and stories passed down, and never written down, but passed down. And that was the way it was with the indigenous people here in this country. And they also mention a lot. I think if you go into their culture and their stories, they mention a lot about these mysterious people that were here, before that. And I think the giants that they talk about, and of course to them they would be giants if you were, people of around 5 foot something, and you run into a 7 foot guy, he would appear to be a giant. My great grandfather was 7 foot actually. That would appear to be, I'm sure that would be scary looking, But I remember a passage in the Bible, and it's a very mysterious passage, where they talk about the sons of Anak. And he says, to them we were like grasshoppers. Think about that description a minute. That's not just being a little frightened by somebody, a little taller than you, but that's really being up there. To me, that makes it a little very suspicious. But going back into the red-haired people in the spirit caves and what happened definitely with that, I would love to see some more exploration of those caves, deeper into some of those cave systems. And I think, like I said earlier, I think a lot of the underground under us holds a lot of secrets that we need to find, to understand things a little bit more. And that might be the connection there with that as well. But those red-haired giants are fascinating to me. I've said that a lot, as well as the moon-eyed people, which were, smaller. And the reason by the way, I'll tell this to whoever may be listening. The reason they were called moon-eyed people is because they actually only came out at night. Their eyes didn't glow or anything like that. But they came out, and they were mostly motivated by the moonlight, were moving around at night and hunting that way. They thought that was very strange for people to act like that. Of course, if you hunt in the daytime, somebody that comes out hunting at night would be rather strange to you. And a lot of the movements, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of the movements of Sasquatch have also taken place at night. So we know that he is not only in daytime, but very much active as nocturnal too, so he's not really held down to being one type. I don't think certain person, he only comes out at daytime or he comes out at night. He is very versatile that way, I think. And so are, by the way, humans that way too. I know a lot of people walk my city streets all night long, but anyway, that's another story. But I'm sure you have some in their neighborhood like that too. But to me, that's, like I said, another hallmark of Sasquatch. I love to talk about that because it makes our picture of him clearer, that we can see more of what he says. And like I see, someday I hope to see the rest of him, not just an arm. But anyone that's ever run into this, for many years, I'm going to tell you this, until my experience, and that same thing happened to me with my UFO sighting. I had a very dramatic UFO sighting. And for many years, Scott, I thought, people are just seeing something else. They're really misidentifying something, And I thought that maybe out of all the UFO sightings. 90% was misidentified or explainable, and maybe 10% wasn't. Until one day I ran into that 10%. That really changed my perspective on things. I rounded another corner, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way what happened with the Sasquatch incident that I had. That made me wonder, again, I thought a lot of times that, a lot of this, as most people do, is not a lot of this Sasquatch, these people may be having too many beers out in the forest or when they were hunting or whatever. I thought that was a lot of it, but I found out that I was definitely wrong on that score. There was something there, definitely, because I saw some of it anyway. To me, that's the icing on the cake.
Yeah. So, we've always heard that folklore seems to have a grain of truth in it, and I think every legend has a basis in fact somewhere. And I think over the years, especially in like groups of people who've had like stories as history, when they're playing a phone game over the years, so the story grows as it is passed down generally, but there's always something in it. There's somewhere that started it, and there's something in that folklore that actually has a basis of truth to it.
Like Paul Revere.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite quote of all time is this: every myth and legend known to mankind is not without its authentic foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is very, very true. I've done a lot of lectures on this, and I've often told my audience, paranormal research is like peeling an onion. You take away the layers of legend to find that center truth that's there, that center grain of truth. That's what you have to do. That's what it's all about. And, unfortunately, some people in our line of work, they want to believe so badly that they let that belief overshadow their intellect, and that should never happen. Sometimes some people want to believe so badly that they'll make it so in their own mind. We have to guard against that. I was talking to Ken Gerhardt. I'm not sure you know who that is.
Yes, I do.
He's a good friend of mine. I told him a story. This illustrates why we have to be very careful. You remember the famous Amazing Kreskin? You remember him? You know who I'm talking about? Well, he tells this story. I used to love to watch him. He's a very interesting guy. He said that he picked 6 random people out of an audience one night, and he took them all out in the back parking lot behind this auditorium. And he said, now for the next hour, we're going to sky watch, because there's been a whole lot of UFO sightings in this area. And so they spent an hour out there watching the sky. So he took them back in front of the audience and told them, he said, now, how many of you saw a UFO? And out of that 6, 5 people raised their hand. I did. And he said, you saw those UFOs because I placed that seed in your mind. And that's very important lesson there. We have to really watch out about that, especially when it comes to research. I call myself an investigative researcher, and research and investigation are married. They're husband and wife, and they go together. And to me, I wouldn't want one without the other, because they complement each other, but they're essential to each other. That's like your wife telling you that she's really essential to you, Scott, because she's your wife. But it's true. I mean, if you have a pairing of something like that, you got not one without the other. They both work together, or should. That's what a relationship is all about. And to me, that is the relationship of investigative research.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to watch how you go about these things. And I was talking to someone not long ago, of course, as you know what I'm about to talk about. In Tibet, there's a teaching that you can, on thought forms, that you can actually think something so much that you can make it so. which falls in line with a lot of ancient religious teachings. That if you dwell upon something so much, and I've actually had people, and it's going to blow your mind here, but I've actually had people come up to me and say they have actually communicated thought-wise with Sasquatch on several occasions. Yeah. And to me, that's another interesting aspect. What's going on with that? Kind of a thing. I remember reading an account of a young girl on a farm that actually was frightened by running into a Bigfoot on the tree line of the farm there. And Bigfoot actually spoke telepathically to her and said, "Don't be afraid, I'm not going to hurt you," kind of thing. You wouldn't believe how many times I've seen that reported that way, and that's another interesting aspect.
Oh, we've had that report too. We've had people on that's had sightings with Bigfoot, and Bigfoot said, "Don't come up here," in their head, kind of interesting. Mind speak. Yeah. So yeah, we hear that a lot. Hey, we got to do another quick little commercial. So we're going to be right back. Hold on. So first we want to remind everybody, did I keep the picture in here? Yes, I did. Look at that.
We're going to be at Geyser Pullman Park in downtown Baker City tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday for the perhaps not world famous, perhaps not USA famous, perhaps not even Pacific Northwest famous, but Eastern Oregon famous Miners Jubilee.
Yeah. I think it's Pacific Northwest famous, maybe.
I never heard of it in Yakima.
Anyway, yeah. Sorry. So we might be a little low on energy today during the show because
we've been
setting up for that today in the park. In fact, we were planning on setting up tomorrow morning early, and then we got a message today and said we had to do it today, and we're like, oh no. So,
and speaking of our booth, we just got new fresh stock of merchandise. So if you are in around the Baker City area, come see our merchandise, which includes the new shirt, Meditation. Because punching humans in the face is not allowed. and I think Renee mentioned this, and now that I have one for myself, she's right. The women's style shirts run really snug. So you might I had to go up 2 sizes.
So
anyway, next announcement
is put this on your calendar. Now, this is a way early announcement, but on October 1st, there's a place in
Elgin,
Oregon called Elgin.
Home of Caesar's In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah, the best burgers in the world, and barbecued French fries, by the way. But Elgin, Oregon, little tiny town, they have a train that they have restored, and it has the people cars on it, and they run into the Two Rivers area of Oregon. So you leave Elgin, you go in, and then the train, it doesn't turn around, it backs up all the way back from where you're at. But it's a 2 or 3 hour, 4 hour drive.
Fabulous. It's not fast. It's a really, really fun ride.
Fun train ride.
They serve you lunch when you get your ticket for this. They serve you lunch. It's a really tasty lunch. They have it catered.
But anyway, they have a Bigfoot train. We'll be on it. We'll be speaking in the cars as the train travels, and we'll get to meet and talk with you guys on the train.
And I don't even know if they have it up officially on their website yet, but we will certainly have that.
As it gets closer, we'll have it.
Yeah, it's EagleCapTrainRides.com. And you want to get your ticket as soon as you can because they sell out really fast. And, they usually sell 200 to 300 tickets, and it goes like boom.
So that's October 1st in Elgin, Oregon. And like I said, come see us tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday at Geyser Pullman Park in Baker City, Oregon.
And tomorrow and Saturday, the festival is open from 9 to 6. Sunday is 9 to 1. So if you're not planning on coming till Sunday, get up at the Cracker Rooster and come over.
That's it. So
get us back on screen.
We will here in a second. I got a question. Where did we see that? Donna wanted to know.
Right there.
So, Dennis, Donna wanted to hear a little more about your Bigfoot experience.
Your encounter.
Your encounter. And what happened afterwards?
Well, it wasn't too long after that. I think it was the next couple of days later after that sighting I had. Like I said, I looked when those two guys got back up there. We spent the rest of the night looking through the woods for Sasquatch. A couple of days later, I actually cast a print I found not too far from that area. It was 18 inches long. It wasn't a real good, unfortunately, it wasn't a real good cast because it was kind of like the worst place you could step in. Seemed like that's what happened a lot. But I got a pretty good little cast out of it, not a whole lot, but I think I donated it to a group that I was with at that time. But I have some pictures of it somewhere. But it was very interesting. Unfortunately, they made a mistake, and I myself did not cast it. I had them cast it, but they cast it with some type of I don't know, some kind of grout like stuff, which they should never have done. I told them to do plaster of Paris, definitely is a good way, and there are certain ways to go about that, of course, as you know, that keeps it intact. And they unfortunately used some type of grouting stuff, and that really screwed up when they did that because it expanded. And you want it to expand, but not too much, so that it obliterates, the shape and all that. So unfortunately, it wasn't really great. I've done some casting my own self, but I found out the hard way: you do it yourself. Don't leave it up to somebody else. But that's what happened. That was the aftermath of it. Now I had some very strange things happen during that Bigfoot experience, and I actually had a run-in several times with some unmarked black SUVs that were in the vicinity of this area, and all this took place within about a week's time. I was doing that. This was about a week, and these were definitely government type vehicles. I actually talk about this in my book, The Road Unseen. I felt, you remember the Mothman prophecies? Yep. I felt like I was living that movie. Actually, weird things began to happen even after this Bigfoot sighting. But while that was taking place, there was an unmarked helicopter that was near that area, and also a drone came over, this was good many years back before drones were very prevalent. You know what I'm saying? This was a definitely government-looking type drone. So there was a lot of weird things went on with that sighting that I had. And I began to get very weird phone calls that were like robotic type voices, and my mail was tampered with. But that night, here's the interesting thing: I had that cast in the back of my truck. I left it in the back of my truck and went home, went in the house. And later that night, my dog alerted me to the fact that there was somebody out in my yard. Now, I have a fence around my yard, and in order for you to get in my fence, of course, you got a gate you got to go through. But there were two gates that had to be actually opened to get to where my truck was. And both of those gates, I found them were open. And I immediately went, God, I got to go see about that cat, So I went and luckily it was there. And I took it back in the house with me. I said, oh, no, I'm not taking any chances with this thing mysteriously disappearing on me. But you would not believe how many people I've run into, I'm sure you have, that have had these type of experiences while, Bigfoot hunting. It's more prevalent than people think it is. But it kind of opened my eyes. It almost made me kind of paranoid because you keep looking over your shoulder who's swallowing you, But it was very strange. That was one aspect that I didn't really expect, all that going on like that. I think I'm not at liberty to talk too much about it, but I've had several run-ins with the government, and they have reason to follow me. I think sometimes on certain things like that. I think they're doing a lot of paranormal researchers that way. But that was very interesting. Like I say, I had to write about it in the book and talk about that a little bit, along with the UFO experience that I had. That kind of started all that stuff. And like I say, I was living the Mothman prophecy there, and that was really weird thing. Finally, it dissipated after a while, but I found out the hard way, and I warn you that anybody that researches any of this stuff, watch your back, because you never know who's watching you.
Yeah.
That's just the way that goes. But I've had a lot of people tell me when you're hunting for Sasquatch, watch out for him because he might be hunting you. You never know.
That's true.
He wants my jalapeno poppers.
So yeah, I always tell people who tell me that I've been in the woods my whole life, I never saw a Sasquatch. I always tell them that doesn't mean he hasn't seen you. So, yep. So,
yep.
Anyway, so any last minute questions from the audience? Let's see what we got. Any here?
We're cracking jokes.
Oh, they're cracking jokes. Okay. What
that was mine.
What was that?
We was talking about the sons of Arnak.
Oh, here we go.
So I come from an Israeli background and also from a lot of scriptural study, and I'm very familiar with the scripture passage talking about the sons of Arnak.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it meant huge, like stompable size difference, but and I'm saying this as they're my people, easily crushed in spirit and easily won. I mean, it was miraculous that Israel could ever take anything. And but so my thought on they were, we were like grasshoppers to them, is they could beat us on the battlefield, they could beat us in war and in our spirits, because of course, ancient Israel walked around mostly whining about themselves most of the time.
For those of you in the audience doesn't know, Hannah's maiden name is Berkowitz. So there's that.
Yeah, I got all the Jews on one side and all of the fundamental Christians on the other. Best in both of all the worlds.
True. I've had a lot of experiences with old timers telling me a lot. I go to the older people a lot of times. They can tell you
that's a great idea.
A lot of stuff that you need to know. And a lot of the old timers, they have a lot of folklore up here in their head. When I was a kid, I used to go. Through the neighborhood, and things were different back then. People actually sat on their porches, and in the evening, and I would go from porch to porch, and I would get these people to tell me their paranormal stories, their ghost story. Every family had a ghost story, and I picked up a lot of good stuff that way years ago, and it's still stuck up here. But you can learn a lot from the old timers, people that's been there and all that, and then experience that. Experience, to me, is the greatest teacher of all, really. Yeah, and unfortunately, when you're young, you don't recognize that right off when you should, but when you get older, you realize, what a great, and unfortunately, a lot of our older folks are gone by then, and so much history is gone with them, and I remember writing in in one book that I wrote, history no story should ever be lost to history, whatever it is. And I encourage people to write down whatever happens to you, not only because it needs to be given to posterity, but you need to write it down because as time goes on, time plays tricks on us all in our minds. And you will forget important aspects of that if you don't write it down. It's very important. Whether you type it on a computer or whether you write it down on paper, whatever the case, don't let it slip. Don't let it get gone, because the other people, and I have learned so much from these, you know, the older people and the history itself, history and folklore. There again, they're another married couple. You know, you don't really one without the other because they're so intertwined. But I've learned a lot from that in many cases that have given me clues to that. And I often say that when it comes to the paranormal, especially, you got to look for the patterns.
Yep.
The patterns tell you the story that you want, and they lead you to the clues. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Exactly right. And well, we're in an hour already. Oh my gosh, Dennis.
That just
flew by. Thank you very much for being with us. We're going to have you back. Okay?
So I'll definitely.
All right.
It's my favorite subject.
All right. So everybody, you can get they can get your books from your website, right? It's DennisWCarroll.com.
Yep. And
take care.
Yep. The link to his website was in the last email we sent. I will put it again in the next email we sent.
All right. Thank you, Dennis.
All right.
So it is that time. Any final words?
Nope, just the normal.
All right. So thank you so much for watching and for liking and subscribing and sharing this with your friends and telling everybody how much you love Squatch America until they want to punch you in the nose.
And come see you in Baker. And
come see us in Baker.
And I want to throw something to the Patreon and the YouTube Coffee Club.
Thank you.
We got a special video that I'm putting together right now. It's just going to go out to you guys, and it's about something we got to do, and because of your support, we got to do it to help a young man out here, and it'll be an interesting video. You're going to cry like us. So anyway, with that said,
remember, our job is to investigate the unexplained,
not to explain the uninvestigated.
So until we see you again, you keep watching, and
we'll keep squatching.
Bye now.
Bye.